Hi guys, welcome to another episode of The Dragon Yawn, coming to you from the mats at Tactical Kung Fu and Mixed Martial Arts. There's really good people who are always helping us out here. You can learn a lot of stuff about all kinds of martial arts and some really obscure, like martial arts related stuff that's not actually taught here. Yeah, we're nerds, right? So today, in that same vein, we're going to be talking about Ninja Turtles. I'm Sifu Mike.
I'm Robert Aldrich.
Like I said, we're going to be talking about Ninja Turtles. It's a very long franchise, and it directly, well, not quite directly, but indirectly relates to this school in a very 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of way, which is kind of how I make my selections for stuff that's going on the show. It's like I pick something, and then I see how many cycles I can go through before I can relate it to here. And if it's less than 6, then I'm like, hey, well, make it to the show.
Excellent.
Yes, and for folks at home, if you don't know what 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon is, then clearly you're not old enough to drink. Look it up, Google it, but not now. Wait till after the show, then you can Google it.
Or pause the video, open another browser, and then come back.
Well, it could, but I wanted to stay and listen to us.
Fair enough.
Yes, so that actually leads me to my first question, which is not quite related to Ninja Turtles, but do you have a bacon number?
Do I have a bacon number?
Yes.
I believe it is 3.
3? Do tell.
I went to school with a number of people who went to North Carolina State University, and they were in the drama program there, and they knew a gentleman who was in a movie with Kevin Bacon. I do not know his name. I do not know which movie it was. He had like one line that ended up getting cut from the theatrical release.
Of course.
But technically.
Yes.
So I believe it is 3.
You have 3. All right, dude. Mine is 4, so you got me beat. All right, so I...
What is yours?
So, I met Lewis Black and have hung out with him a lot because he frequented the bar that he used to work at.
The stand-up comedian who...
Yes.
Who actually is from this area.
Yeah, and he lives in Chapel Hill. He's a super nice guy. Gave me the best advice ever, man. He told me never to name drop. And so, but he was on the Daily Show with Jon Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jon Stewart also had Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks was in Apollo 13 with Kevin Bacon. Yeah, so that's my bacon number.
And that was 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon right there. So you don't need to pause the video and Google it. We saved you time. We're nice like that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's how it's done, man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a game for the ultra film geeks, pretty much.
Or drunk people.
Hence why you got to be old enough to drink, right? Well, if you're not old enough to drink, you really don't know this. It's been a while for a while. Okay.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes,
Turtles in a half shell.
That is all the main reason why I have him here is that he keeps me on track because I'm like, hey, shift gears, go that way, shiny objects, squirrel!
It's true. Yeah.
Anyways, so we're going to be talking about the whole franchise. Now, how the first one relates to me, to this school, is that it was actually filmed in my hometown, in Wilmington, North Carolina. Now, the movie takes place in New York City, and there are some scenes and shots that kind of establish that, but for the most part, the bulk of it was filmed in Wilmington, and downtown Wilmington was used kind of like a surrogate for New York City, and it's pretty cool because I go back and I'm watching, I'm like, hey, I know that alley, hey, I know that building, hey, that's cool, hey, I think that's the campus of UNCW. All right, even though they say, hey, it's Central Park, I'm like, no, I'm looking at the architecture of that light bulb, and I'm like, no, that's clearly not New York City, and so that is the main way that I know about it. It's very much Wilmington. Like I watch it and I'm like, I see all these different places and things that are very much familiar to me, and I see the same backlot that I know so well. Man, this backlot was in The Crow, which we talked about in our first episode, right? So it's there in Ninja Turtles. And what's funny is in Ninja Turtles 2, which is also filmed in Wilmington, they use the same backlot, only they dress it a little bit differently and film it from the entirely opposite direction. So you have no idea it's the same thing, but I'm like, Eagle Eye, I know this thing. That's the same one. That's the same architecture. So I love that place. the other way that that movie kind of relates to me is in a very, very odd way. You remember the scene at the very beginning? I think it's like 8 minutes into it or something like that, where Michelangelo orders a pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and pizza.
As turtles are wont to do.
Yes, exactly. And so the pizza guy comes, right?
On
On
a moped.
a moped, and delivers pizza down through like a storm drain or something
Yeah.
like that.
It's like the address he is given is like 634 and a half Lincoln Street or
Yeah,
something,
or
and he
an
can't find
8,
it, obviously. And there's the storm drain, and he talks to Michelangelo through the storm drain, and they offer him the cash through the storm drain. Now, so here's my first gripe with the movie. I'm fine with mutated giant monsters. I'm fine with subterranean dwelling amphibians. I'm fine with teenagers that have been elitely trained in ninjutsu arts and all of that. I am not okay with 4 giant athletes, 5 if we're going to count Splinter, and we really should,
Yeah, he's
with
pretty cool.
1 pizza. That is not enough food for the 5 of them.
I didn't think about that.
That's not even 2 slices a person. There ain't no way.
Yeah, I mean,
Especially if you're going to have like pineapple and peanut butter on your pizza. Come on. Don't play that game.
that is very
You're
true.
at least going to get 2.
Back when I was a teenager, man, I could eat half a pizza easily.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's they're teenagers. They gotta have that rabid appetite.
There we go.
And so that makes total sense. But really, that scene is a complete, what I call throwaway scene. The only reason why I think that exists is a massive product placement. Okay, that is entirely, there's a close-up shot of the pizza.
What are you
going
talking
down
about?
through- Yeah, and you can clearly see the top of the box. You can clearly see where it came from, and they linger on that sucker too. They're like, let me fold the bill up front.
Mhm.
And so it is all product placement. But here's how that scene relates to me. The delivery driver on the moped, right? The whole concept of delivering pizza on a moped actually came from my stepdad. Because in Wilmington, at the time, he was delivering pizza in a very small area, mind you, on his moped. And they happened to see that, and they were like, that's a really cool idea.
If you've never been to Wilmington, North Carolina, try to appreciate that there are whole sections of the town, especially back in the 80s and early 90s, where there was half a lane of a street, and you couldn't go more than 8 miles an hour. And so delivering pizza on a moped, delivering pizza on a bicycle, things like that were very, very plausible because a car was almost impractical.
There's also, like, you think about Wrightsville Beach, you can't go any higher than, I think, 35. It might even be 25 now. They might have just lowered the speed limit. So, like, you're going at a snail's pace if you're in a car. But if you're in a moped, you can just scoot around every single which way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from a movie perspective, I know that that's completely unnecessary. They could have just shown that guy walking up. They didn't need to show the moped, but they wanted that in there. I guess because it was cool, because it was totally different, and from a delivery driver perspective, because I was a delivery driver for like 3 years, I wouldn't ever deliver on a moped. But back in the day, man, that's how it is. So that's how that movie relates to me. So Ninja Turtles 1 is very close to my heart, near and dear. That's a movie I grew up with. Like I said, the franchise is very old. It actually started the same year I was born.
Was it really?
Yes,
Oh, my
in
Lord.
1984. And the movie came out in 1990. And so, but yeah. Now, the next part is, I forgot to mention, the voice actor. So here's the interesting thing, is that out of all the people who voiced the different Ninja Turtles in that first film, Corey Feldman actually voiced Donatello.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. And so if you really look at it in that context, you kind of think they must have thought that Corey Feldman or that Donatello was going to be like the star of that movie, because he had all the cool fight scenes, all the cool moves with the bow staff. He was actually the stunt guy in the suit. Was Ernie Reyes Jr., who had the starring role in the next film, right? But all the cool martial arts stuff that you see is mostly Donatello.
If you don't know who Ernie Reyes Jr. is, he was the guy who beat the hell out of The Rock in The Rundown. And if you haven't seen The Rundown, I am so sorry.
Or you can go to IMDb, and he's done a lot of stuff, man. He's really cool. And so Yeah, he was there. It's also what's really cool about looking about old movies is that you see famous actors before they were famous, and so like I didn't know this until I rewatched it. But I'm looking at this one character, and I was just kind of like, I know that guy. I've seen him before. I know him. He is somewhere. I actually had to look him up. But do you know who I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Sam Rockwell.
Exactly. He's totally in Ninja Turtles 1, man. Before he was like Sam Rockwell, he was I think Head Thug was actually
Yeah, exactly,
he didn't even have a name.
And if you can't see it, whenever they start showing at the end of the movie, just play "Picking Up the Pieces" by Average White Band, and it'll click. Because every movie he's been in since then, he dances to that at least once. Justin Hammer walking in Iron Man 2, Average "Picking Up the Pieces."
I didn't realize
Boogie Nights, "Picking Up the Pieces."
That's hilarious.
I'm sure they worked it into the moon somehow.
I don't know. I have to go back and watch it. But
Let's not get carried away now.
I mean, I need a reason to watch the film again.
No, you don't.
No.
Not the moon. No, you don't. It was good once. It's like Children of Men. Everybody should see it once. You ain't never got to see that thing again.
All right. Moving on. Turtles 3 actually is also related to this school in particular in another 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon type way. Actually, a little bit
Much shorter.
Much shorter. It's not even 6, like 2. I think 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been here.
Yeah, he has like twice. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
What we're talking about is Sifu Ao. He was the sub coordinator for Turtles 3. Now, he's not quite credited, and we'll get to why. I didn't know he was the sub coordinator for Turtle 3 because he isn't credited on the movie. I found out by reading his book. Got it right here. Alright? Legacies, the autobiography is pretty cool. It's a good read. Alright? So definitely check this out. Chronicles a lot of stuff, man. If you ever want to get to know about the why behind some of the aspects of One Hop Kendo, read this book, man. It's pretty cool. But that's where I got this story. I was like, there's a story I'm going to tell you guys about Turtles 3 that I knew about the story, but I didn't know it was him until I read this book. Right? So it was a really cool book. But while I'm on the subject of talking books, I'm going to plug this guy. He's a writer, okay? He's got a book.
This isn't the book. This is a poster.
This is a poster
Yes.
of the book. The book kind of looks like this. It's about a little girl who saves the world with metal,
Yes.
right? And there's a dragon.
No, it's a giant lizard.
It's a little dragon.
No, it's a giant lizard, and it's a little girl. And there's a lot of metal. She saves the world with the power of rock and roll and a giant lizard. It's called Rokaiju. It is available at your favorite distributor, whether that's Amazon or Amazon. It's available as an ebook. It's available in print. There's a host of other books, but Rokaiju is the big one. Please check it out. It is a lot of fun. It is very, very good. It is a wonderful read, and you should definitely check it out.
And it has a lizard that evolved from a dragon.
Sure.
Yes. It's got to be. It looks like the poster looks like a dragon.
The poster looks like a...
That looks like a dragon. You know what, Internet? Settle this for me. Go online, buy his book, read his book. Looks like that, okay? And in the comments, tell me whether or not he describes a lizard or a dragon. I think he said that looks like a dragon.
We'll settle a wager.
He's even got claws, man.
I know it has claws. It's a giant lizard. Every giant lizard has claws. That's just physics.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways.
It's like every giant lizard can breathe like a blast, an energy blast, or fire, or ice, or poison. I mean, that's.
I thought that was just that one dinosaur.
No,
in
that's just
Jurassic Park.
That's all science. No. Every lizard over 9 feet can breathe fire, an energy blast, plasma, ice. Come on.
I don't know that. I don't know this because I went to school for economics.
You see, this is why you need to be playing more Dungeons and Dragons. I'm just saying. You would know these things.
Anyways, shorter story. Buy his book. Read it. Tell me if he's describing a dragon. And anyways, back to Turtles.
Back to Turtles.
Like you're supposed to keep me on track.
Yes.
I'm sitting here.
Back to the Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad. I mean, immature radioactive samurai slugs. There we go.
So the story is that while they were filming, there was an accident on set that involved a stuntman being trampled by a horse.
This is Turtles 3, by the way.
Turtles 3, yes. Turtles 3. There's 3. Okay, and I knew about this story. I forgot how I know about that. There's a lot of things I know about that. I don't know how I know it, but I know it. And so I knew about the story. I'm reading the book, and I find out that stuntman was Sifu Ao. And I was like, oh my gosh. Totally, it was just like, right, which might be why he's not credited, because maybe he didn't finish the movie. Now, from a martial arts perspective, fighting styles are essentially like fingerprints. The more you know about the different fighting style, the more you can kind of see it every which way. And Sifu Ao's fingerprints are all over that movie, man. The fight scenes are amazing. They're awesome. They use their weapons, right? They incredibly use their weapons. Like in the first Ninja Turtles, Leonardo goes to use his swords. He gets disarmed in one move, the very first move that he does, and both swords are gone. Both.
No, be gentle on him. He's a teenager.
They're a teenager, but they're supposed to be ninjas. They're supposed to be proficient with weapons, and they don't. And here's the crazy thing: in Turtles 2, they hardly don't use their weapons at all. In fact, Leonardo doesn't touch his swords. They magically appear and disappear when he's fighting, though. So they're on his back. But when you watch Turtle 3, they are using their weapons a lot. There's like weapon stuff all over the place. It looks beautiful. And one of the things that Sifu Ao added to Kaji Kippa to make One Hot Kendo was a whole bunch of original forms, and I think all but 2 of them have weapons. Like, he's really good at weapons, so you can kind of see his fingerprints everywhere. There's even a scene where April O'Neil palm heel strikes a dude in like the throat, and I was like, that is totally him, because everyone else, man, would just fist, bam, right, and just boom, but she's like, wham, and just pushes straight up into him.
To sing Sifu Ao's praises a little bit further, now, a lot of people, when they hear about weapon skills and your ability to use weapon skills, and I know you know this, but for you in our viewing audience at home, or let's be honest, at work, while this is minimized in the corner of the video, weapon skills are not just knowing how to use a weapon, it's also knowing how to deal with a weapon. The idea that somebody else has this weapon and you have to deal with them having that weapon. And so there's so much more than simply, I have a sword, I know where the edge is, I know how to swing it. There's also how, oh, he has a sword, I do not. How do we proceed? And these kind of skills, this is what can make for really fantastic fight scenes. Because if you have a sword and you know how to swing a sword, great. If you can have 9 guys with swords and you don't have a sword, things get interesting. If you can have 9 guys, each person with a different weapon, and your central protagonist has to deal with each person individually and distinctly, that's where the magic happens. That's where you get really innovative, creative fight scenes. And that's the kind of stuff Sifu Ao was able to bring to the party.
Yeah, and they're really good stuff. I'd have to say, because I went on like a Ninja Turtles binge where I watched a lot of movies, including there's one that I didn't even know existed. It was an animated film that came out, I think, 2007 or something like that. It was actually pretty good. But I, again, didn't even know it was there. Not my generation, I guess. But, so I watched them all, and I have to say, I love the martial arts in that movie. It's not the best of the movies. Like Ninja Turtles 1 will always be near and dear to my heart. But Turtles 3, man, if I want to see some good fight scenes, that's the movie that I'm going to go to. They're better. They're a lot more fluid. There's definitely some kung fu elements in there. The person credited as the martial arts advisor and the fight choreographer and the stunt coordinator is a guy named Pat Johnson. And if you go into IMDb, he's got a really good, solid body of work. The man's a good guy. In fact, I think he even did Karate Kid 1. Yeah, so he's responsible for the crane kick,
Sweet.
But he's
credited. Don't laugh. You did it too. Don't laugh. I hear the snickering in the comment section now. Don't laugh.
Yeah, and so, like I said, he's credited, but I think it was more of a he delegated it to somebody else, because he's also credited for Ninja Turtles 2, and in that film they didn't use their weapons at all. So it seems to be this very unlikely element that you can jump from not being proficient in weapons to being incredibly proficient in weapons in a very short amount of time, given the productions and stuff that they have to do.
Well, there are two other factors at play that are completely outside the creative process and the making of the movie process. One, going back to the Turtles using their weapons. For the Turtles fans in the audience who may have watched the animated series, the cartoon series, come on, it was a cartoon.
Yeah.
You may have remembered that after season 1, Michelangelo stopped using his nunchucks. He started using a grappling hook on a rope. Part of the reason for that was because of the censorship laws in Britain at the time, I believe. I don't know the laws specifically, I don't know why they were in inhibition, but the cartoon was problematic in broadcasting in Great Britain at that time. The transition to having Michelangelo use a grappling hook instead was specifically to address those issues. You're dealing with, this is 1990 or so,
Yeah.
so you're dealing with our culture in America is going through a radical transition. We're a couple of years off from Smells Like Teen Spirit just completely deflating rock and roll music.
Yeah, I mean,
NWA and gangster rap is starting to appear. And so a lot of censorship elements are worried about violence and its depiction in media.
apparently, Ninja Turtles was very violent. A
Yeah.
lot of people objected to that, and like by today's standards, that sucker is tame.
Yeah.
And Turtles 2 came out a year later, so for production-wise, that was like, they're jam-packed. Like, I think they probably started on that as soon as it went into theaters, or even before that.
Well, they had to get Kevin Nash before he pulled his quads again.
Well, now, also, if you look at Turtles 2, like, Michelangelo doesn't ever use his nunchucks. He uses sausages. I mean, it's a fun scene, but they're not nunchucks. You hit somebody.
Well, going back to the Pat Johnson and Sifu Al issue, another issue that can also play into there is North Carolina is a right-to-work state, which means that the Screen Actors Guild and other organizations don't have the leverage here that they do elsewhere.
Well, Turtles 3, which is the one that Sifu Al works on, was not filmed in Wilmington. And that, I think, was probably filmed in some island somewhere.
Maybe
because like they did some really good location shooting on the beach and everything. It actually looks really good. I don't know where it's been though.
The issue that I'm ultimately trying to get to is not speaking about this specifically, but anytime that you come across these inequities in films, one factor can be the presence of the Screen Actors Guild versus the not Screen Actors Guild and where you're filming. Half the film is shot in a right-to-work state, and half the film is shot in a union state. There's going to be a lot of issues as to who can get credit and who cannot get credit. And so little things like that can have a big impact.
And if you ever go in IMDb, there's just look through the cast. There's a lot of people who aren't credited. They'll still list them there, which is great, but they're not actually listed in the movie. And so, but yeah.
Poor Dakota Fanning will never get credit for what she did in that movie.
Yeah, so going back to the whole franchise, talking about their weapons and weapons work as far as Ninjutsu goes, pretty much none of those weapons are actually ninja weapons. In fact, you see martial arts wise, and especially in the first couple films, it's all Taekwondo, mostly karate, but there's very little weapon stuff. Now in the third film, like I said, there's a whole bunch of kung fu. There's things that they do that I'm like, that is clearly kung fu. Clearly kung fu. And it's a nice mix between the Taekwondo and the karate and kung fu. Sifu kind of mixes it up a whole bunch, which is really what this martial art is. So One Hap Kendo and Kaji Kippo, it's a mix. It's a mutt. It's got a whole bunch of different martial arts from all over, everywhere, whatever works for the person. Try to make them the best them possible. So, but it's very interesting. A lot of people think those are ninja weapons, and they're not actually ninja weapons. What I did find very interesting is the story behind why Ninja Turtles existed, which I didn't know. I knew it was a comic book. It was based on a comic book property. This was before comic book movies were like everywhere all the time. There's Ninja Turtles. And he told me an awesome story. I even double checked this on the internet. I was like, man, I get more details. Like, hilariously awesome. I'll let him explain this.
Are you talking about the connection with Daredevil?
Oh, I'm talking about all of that.
So, Eastman and Laird, who were the pair that created Ninja Turtles, they created it as a parody. They were making fun of the direction comic books were going in the early to mid 80s. There was Alan Moore and Frank Miller are largely credited for moving comic books out of the kiddie realm and into the adult world, which is a gross overgeneralization. But you had Alan Moore wrote the Watchmen,
yeah.
and Frank Miller wrote The Return of the Dark Knight, that gets credited for bringing hyper-violent, hyper-realism to comic books. And these were not alone. Frank Miller also wrote a award-winning and very good story arc on Daredevil.
Yes.
And this is where this is what is principally pointed to, because Eastman and Laird thought they needed to take the piss out of this. But the idea of having hyper-violent superheroes and hyper-realistic superheroes was silly. So they came up with the silliest idea they possibly could: giant mutant turtles who were teenagers.
Amazingly silly.
And make it into dark, hyper-violent.
And incredibly ridiculous.
Yes. And
just the sentence alone, the title.
Yes, and it was a parody. It was a joke. You see the hallmarks of this with the Shredder. Who are the ninjas that the Shredder uses? They are called the Foot Clan. This was a parody of the Hand from Daredevil and from Marvel Comics. Everything about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was supposed to just take the piss out of hyper-violent realism and just a quick, goofy lark.
I think it was like one book, too,
and
right?
It was 4 issues.
Four
so yeah,
issues,
one graphic
like
novel.
One
and
arc.
Then the toys started.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
One of the most successful toy lines in children's entertainment history, hands down, bar none, damn straight.
Yes.
And you had at least one of them.
The cartoon I think, is what really kicked it off.
Oh yeah, the cartoon was terrific.
Was like 1987. The book came out in 1984.
Yeah.
And so they made quick work of this, man.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to franchise this sucker. We're going to make some money off of it.
And it ran like nobody's business.
The most ridiculous thing ever.
And it's a very fascinating thing. A lot of people remember Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from back then, and they remember like a quick little window of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from their life. They remember the cartoon, they remember the movies maybe. They may remember the live-action TV series that happened a little bit later. They may remember one of the cartoons that followed. The fact is, TMNT has been in production pretty much non-stop from '87 onward. There's never really been a time TMNT hasn't been somewhere in production. There haven't been toys, there hasn't been a cartoon series, there hasn't been a TV show. It's on the air now, and it's actually quite good.
It's a franchise as old as I am.
Yep.
Which is amazing. I mean, I'm old.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least you still have hair.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's why you're here, man. You make me look good.
I do what I can.
My hair looks amazing when I
does.
sit next to you. So, my forehead's still shiny.
Back to ninja weapons, because I'm not self-conscious about it at all.
Yeah, so we'll start with Leonardo.
Mm-hmm.
His 2 swords, the straight-bladed katana, is called...
a Ninjutsu.
Ninjutsu, thank you. And that, again, going back to the whole fighting styles, fingerprint kind of thing, if you learn about the weapon and what it was used for, you can kind of get a sense of it. Historically, that weapon doesn't really exist until like 1956 or 58. I have a note somewhere. Yeah, 56. And so, 1956, there's a photo of that weapon. I think 58 is when there's a replica in a museum in Japan. But for the most part, there's not any actual historical evidence beyond that. We're talking about ninjutsu came around in like the 15th century, but that sword isn't there in the 15th century. And when you really think about the nature of ninjutsu and what they're trying to do, and trying to be all kind of sneaky and spies and assassins, and they gotta hide themselves in whatever equipment they're using, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have a 2.5 foot long sword. I mean, it's kind of difficult to hide that, right? And so that kind of throws a big monkey wrench into the whole deal, is that sword, that normally swords have a purpose, that's why they're created, it really didn't actually exist. Because the samurais have a curved edge because it's used for cutting, right? And so you've got to think, they probably encountered many different design elements when coming up with that one. And so they started probably with the easiest one, which is a straight-bladed sword. All right, straight sword doesn't work as well as this curved sword. What do you think?
The straight-bladed sword comes from Korea. The Korean, the swords were brought over in the I can't remember the 900s, shortly before the Japanese society would pretty much import Chinese society wholesale. The Korean Empire, the Ri Empire, used straight-bladed swords, and you'll see this. And if the ninjutsu were still using, if the ninja were still using these swords, that would suggest they were importing them. Now, because the borders were closed, because the Japanese had walled off and become very xenophobic, that would suggest that you're dealing with a group that was ignoring the laws of the emperor and of the shogunate, which was a big damn deal. So, if they did have these straight-bladed weapons, the idea that they may have been made in Japan is quite unlikely. That means they would have been importing them from abroad. That's a no-no. So again, you're dealing with, if such a weapon existed, it would have been kind of illegal.
Interesting.
So
there's a whole lot of he said, she said kind of stuff within this whole ninjutsu argument thing. It still looks cool on screen, but we're just letting you know that there's not a whole lot of physical evidence to back this up. It's not like this martial arts that's been around for hundreds of years that's well documented. When ninjutsu first started, most of the guys were kind of illiterate. They weren't the top notch. Like samurais, they were a class of educated people, right? And so they all about writing and stuff, and they were about keeping their art form alive and their history alive and documenting all that stuff. Whereas if I'm an assassin, right, if I don't want people to know about me. I don't want written proof of me being an assassin.
Quick aside here. So I can hear the typing start in the comments section already. So let's say that you go to a school that calls itself Ninjutsu. We are not suggesting you are not learning good stuff at that school.
Oh, yeah.
We are not suggesting that your school isn't derived from a martial art that's been around for 1,000 years. All we're saying is the historical evidence is lacking. And if your school has historical evidence, great, kick ass. I know some historians who would love to talk to you. That's all we're suggesting. And if your school calls itself Ninjutsu and you're learning good stuff, bless you, keep on there.
That's also why I have him here. He remembers to do that kind of stuff, saving me from all the comments.
So, let's get back to the Ninja Turtles.
Yes, so the straight-bladed sword, like I said, I can't find that anywhere. Your story about the Korean thing is very cool. And so I'm going to segue into another turtle. Okay, we're talking like Michelangelo with the nunchucks, all right? The ones that he uses are a very Okinawan type nunchuck with the shorter chain. And it's very cool. Like I said, you see it a lot in karate, and taekwondo has adopted it later, and that's a type of flail. It was made popular in the U.S. By Bruce Lee, who was doing, he did nunchucks in a movie, and they weren't really the canonical, like, Okinawan nunchucks that we know. They had a longer chain. And that's actually a Filipino type of nunchuck called a, if I get the pronunciation right, it's a Tobak Toyak, I think. Like I said, I'm not really good at pronouncing my own language. Like just, yeah, I know. Exactly.
Oh,
so,
man.
yeah, exactly. So this is what happens when I teach class. I don't talk that much. I can't pronounce what I'm saying.
Speaking of product placement, Tactical Kung Fu and MMA.
I don't even have the right shirt for it.
It's all right.
This is my fitness shirt.
There you go.
Anyways, so that is what was predominant in America. That's what they learned. It's like, hey, nunchuck stuff, we're going to do that. Now,
because it's fun.
It really is.
Nunchucks are fun.
It really is. And I mean, we teach it here, and not because it's the most practical weapon, but what it teaches. And the fact that you're learning it is super practical. And so I absolutely love them. And again, like you said, they're super fun. But anyway, so that is the Filipino version that was taught to Bruce Lee by Dan Inosanto. Bruce Lee kind of went on, learned a whole bunch of other stuff, came back to Inosanto, and was like, hey man, I got this stuff. And Inosanto started learning from him. And that's kind of where it all applies. But like traditionally, you would see that type of weapon in the Okinawan styles. How it began, I've heard different stories.
I've heard that it's supposed to be a grain thrasher.
Yeah, like
I've never collected grain. I've never done much farming, so I have no idea why you would use that. But sure, why not?
I've heard a couple things. You know, I've heard a thing like they put it in the horse's mouth, and so and control the horse somehow. I don't know.
We're city boys.
Beach bum.
Mm.
Beach bum.
Dork, nerd,
Yeah.
geek.
All the above. And so that's Michelangelo's weapon. The key thing here is that it is not a ninja weapon. They didn't have that. In fact, I think the years kind of don't add up. They don't align.
Couldn't tell you.
That's the problem. Now, Donatello's weapon, the bow staff, is in like every martial art you can think of. Man, there's a Chinese bow staff. There's Korean. There's Japanese. There's Okinawan. I think Japanese have entire art forms. It's called Bojutsu.
European, African, Mesoamerican, every single culture uses the damn staff.
If you got a big stick, they'll use it. And there's different ways to use it.
Little John with his fight against Robin Hood on the river, crossing the bridge.
Yeah, bow
every
staff.
martial art has a bow staff.
Yeah,
or a quarterstaff, or whatever you want to call it.
Honestly, though, I will say the one I think that is in Ninja Turtles because it was on his shell in the back. I do think that was more of the Chinese short staff. I don't think, because it was also thin. It wasn't as thick as some of the more Okinawan and Korean bow staffs that I've seen. So.
Well, to piggyback on that point, one possible origin of the ninja clans, if we discount the idea that they were created by the Tengu on the mountaintop, the half human, half crow thing, is that the ninja clans may have originated with Chinese pirates who sailed in the Japanese Ocean. And so that lends credence to the idea that it may have been a Chinese staff. Now, that's a level of historical accuracy that you wouldn't expect from a movie with giant amphibians, but you never know.
Are they amphibians or reptiles?
Turtles are amphibians, tortoises are reptiles, I believe. Comment section, tell me if I'm wrong.
Economist, writer,
dork, or nerd.
I'm a geek.
There we go.
Yeah. And so that's a bow staff.
Yeah.
The techniques that they use, even though I think it's more of a Chinese short staff, is definitely the Japanese type techniques. That's all the same stuff for the most part. I mean, the human body can only move in so many different ways. You're gonna have some of the same stuff.
Well, but it's also he uses his hands mostly in the center, whereas the Chinese styles they tend to move their hands off to one end and use it almost like a giant ass sword.
Yeah. So you realize they can't see your other hand.
I do.
Yeah, okay. Just putting that out there.
This is what you get if you pay double. If you get a code if you join here, and you get this side of the screen over here.
Yeah.
This is where we have the dancing cat.
And if you're just listening, okay, we're making a whole bunch of visual gags that you will never get. Okay.
We're really not. We're just shaking our hands in the air.
Moving my hands. That's what I'm good
You've got the picture minimized while you're working, because, come on, you're watching this at work. You're missing nothing.
Yeah, totally. And so, anyway, so that's 3 out of 4. Raphael's weapon is the size.
The best turtle.
Best turtle. I don't know. I'm partial to Michelangelo.
I know you are, and you're wrong.
I have to be, it's my namesake.
I understand. You're still wrong.
And he likes pizza. And
I understand. They all like pizza. That's a low bar, man. You could scrape your ankle on that bar.
Yes. But, I set my standards low so I can exceed them.
This is why we're friends.
Exactly.
Your low standards. So, Raphael.
Talk about the size.
The size of what? I couldn't resist.
The bad puns. Welcome to the Dragon Yawn, the show where we do bad puns all the time. We should have Austin on here. He's the king of bad puns. I don't think I can get him on the show, though. Anyways, Raphael's weapon. Okay.
The sai.
Those appear in a lot of different places. That is mostly a South Asian weapon. There's a lot of Indonesian martial arts that have that weapon. And it's an actual weapon. It wasn't like I was originally told it was a farming tool. I'm like, what can you do with farming-wise? I mean, not from the beach. But still, it's kind of like, okay, cool, you can plant.
Well, you see, and the Japanese already had a weapon that was very similar called a jute, which is essentially it's like a short sword, a metal rod that's about the size of, say, your wakizashi, for those butcher knife, a Bowie knife, for those of you in the Western world, and it has a single arm that juts out, like a sai, if you're familiar with Raphael's weapons, but it's only on one side, not two. The idea that they would have a bifurcated version and the single side version was always quite weird. Learning that it's more of a Southern Asian weapon rather than a Japanese weapon definitely makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, and the thing is, from my research, it didn't actually really appear in Okinawa until about 1668. And if you also look at some of the other ones, the last official manual for ninjutsu that was written was 1664, I believe.
Something like that.
Something like that.
That was the Iga and the Koga clans and all that fun stuff.
And so the dates don't really line up.
Another thing we need to we need to interject here is, so you have three nations that play here during this history. You have Japan, you have Korea, and you have Okinawa in the middle. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Japanese history, Okinawa is kind of Puerto Rico to Japan's America, or maybe Ireland to England. It is a closely aligned nation. It is a nation that has been forever related to Japan, going back to antiquity, but for most of history actually wasn't technically part of Japan, or was still considered somewhat independent. And it's, for a long time, it was about equidistance between the Japanese Empire and the Korean Empire. And so if you had developments historically, things that might come to Okinawa would not appear in Japan for quite some time, or the other way around. So it's worth keeping in mind.
I'm actually checking my cheat sheet. I got my numbers backwards.
Ah.
All right, so the size did actually appear in Japan in 1668, whereas the oldest manual of ninjutsu was 1681. So there's a likelihood, a probability that that was an actual ninja weapon. Again, it's long and they have to hide stuff, so the probabilities are, very slim. But it did exist, so they can get that. But you see that a lot in like karate forms, because Okinawan, right? The actual word ninja didn't actually exist until after World War II in Americas. Before that, it was a shinobi, which I think is like assassin or something like that. Something. I should have looked up the translation.
Well, it's also, going on to that, our concept of the ninja is so very skewed. The ninja costume that we associate, there's no historical accuracy for that. Where that comes from is from Noah theater and kabuki theater. The way those theaters work in traditional Japanese theater is stagehands dress in all black in the ninja costume, as we know, and move things around on stage, and the audience just ignores it. That's their part of the stage, not a big deal. Some enterprising director said, hey, let's simulate the ninja's ability to vanish and appear out of nowhere and their magic by having one of the stagehands, quote unquote, attack the character. And that's where the costume came from, is it was essentially tech crew.
I was a tech crew on stage and dressed in black. And there were times when I really did want to attack someone.
I understand. And so that's where, so the whole ninja costume that we know of basically comes from the Noah theater equivalent of Michael Bay and high-level special effects used to simulate the invisibility.
I'll be honest, man. At first watch, I didn't really like the new Ninja Turtles movies that came out. But when I started thinking about it in the context of it is the only ridiculous franchise that has Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I was like, okay, let me just put this aside and rewatch these things. And those movies are just scary accurate to the cartoon from the 80s. They really are just like, they're silly. They hands down. So, 34-year-old me probably at first glance didn't really like them a whole lot, but like 8-year-old me would have loved those films. They're amazing, absolutely amazing. They even do one of the things in my research. I say research. I watch movies, guys. That's my research. I watch movies and I hit the Google and that was it. And then we made a podcast.
The Google.
The Google. In Spanish, it's called El Google.
Oh God, get out.
That's the length of my Spanish right there.
That's not even Spanish, man. That's
is this
Spanglish.
Spanglish? It's El Google. I don't know, it's Google. Google's a word now, right?
Google's always been a word. It's a mathematical expression.
All right, cool. Where is I going?
I don't know. You were talking about the movies, the live action movies.
So there's a scene that Michael Bay like called back in where like they throw the pizza up and Leonardo is cutting up with his swords and one of the slices lands on Splinter's head.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's also in Turtles 1. I think that's also in the cartoon.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that's where they got it from. I just don't remember the cartoon because frankly, there's a lot of stuff that I don't remember.
Some of the cartoon is really, really good. Some of it ages like old milk.
What's surprising, though, is that, like I said, it's the only franchise that gives me Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And like,
X-Men gets you 3/4 of the way there, but...
With who? Well,
Shadowcat.
Shadowcat?
Yeah, she's a trained ninja.
Oh, well, I mean, they have ninjas in Marvel. There's a lot. I mean, we already talked about how the hand was or rather, the foot was a parody for the hand.
It's true.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm waiting for another series where they just like we're gonna have the ear,
the spleen
clan. But what is amazing in the
check out Rakaiju 2 with the spleen clan.
Is that in there?
No.
Oh man.
It will be now.
Yeah. In the next book. That's awesome. But it's really in the age that we live in with all the reboots and everything like that. No one has ever tried to copy this franchise.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, I mean, I would have totally dug some other like variations of Ninja Turtles, like adolescent mutant kung fu geckos.
I don't want to be your friends anymore.
I could see that, or even better, we got geriatric mutant judo lizards. So
would go good on Nick at Night.
Yeah, totally. You know, and if you really want to go vague with it, you could have. This one I love. It's the millennial mutant MMA reptiles.
Extreme.
Yeah, or since they're not reptiles, because I thought they were, it could be amphibians.
There we go.
We could have MMMAA.
There we go.
Yeah, just lots of M's and lots of A's. So we can really like double down, triple down on the ridiculousness that is that entire title. All right.
Which is the purpose of that entire title.
It's just totally ridiculous, but like I said, relates to this school and relates to me, and it's a great franchise. So it's definitely worth checking out. But after or before you check out that franchise, you should check out his book and check out Sifu's book. And get the props.
Rakaiju, Legacy.
Yes.
Tactical Kung Fu and MMA in Durham, North Carolina. I'm Robert Aldrich.
He's Robert Aldrich. I'm Sifu Michael. This has been Dragon Yawn. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Tune in next time. We're going to be talking about more stuff related to this school in a very 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of way.
Exactly.
You can find us at YouTube. Okay, make sure to subscribe and like, and what was that other one?
Click the little bell so that you get notified when we update.
Ring the bell! Alright, so got that. Also got a Facebook page you can check out, Tactical Kung Fu, Mixed Martial Arts, TKFMMA. Okay, we've got a Twitter, thank you, Instagram, and a website, which is tkfmma.com.
Excellent. Right? We'll see you next week. Get back to work.
Bye!